So I figured that having Jen on the thumbnail was more than enough. So I thought while I'm introducing this video, I'd rather look at the face of Tyler and Tatiana and Maddie, who looks extremely happy there, rather than another photo of Jen and Maddie together. You'll also notice that I bumped up my Kylie Rodney song to the start of this video also because I thought it was so very appropriate for this particular video, given that the lyrics are, "I begin to wonder, did you ever give a F about me?" Because most of us question whether Jen ever gave an F about Maddie. So I think this video kind of, on one hand, doesn't need to be done, really. We can recognise that Jen really wasn't the Mother of the Year. But I just wanted to highlight the many things in interviews that show us very much that she was definitely not the Mother of the Year. I have a lot of clips here. Hopefully I'll get through them all, because I think there's a lot of worth in looking at all this. Because I know some people are like, well, poor Jen, she's the victim too. But if Jen hadn't have been the mother that she was, Maddie would definitely still be here today. Jen allowed that monster access to her daughter. Jen created such a negative relationship with Tyler that Maddie was pretty much denied what I think probably could have been a much better family. I know people have expressed reservations, but it's not our place to judge, because Tyler never had a chance to prove his worth as a father. And basing it on one interview, when we think about Stearns, I think we are coloured by what we think of Stearns in terms of some of the things that Tyler said that made people uncomfortable. So I'm choosing not to judge. I do think, given the photos that I've seen of Maddie when she was with Tyler, when she was with Tatiana, that she probably would have had a much happier life there. So anyway, let's jump in and have a look at Jen, the Mother of the Year.
Jen, what is your fear? I know you mentioned she's on games and stuff. Do you think she could have met somebody and tried to meet up with them?
She's open to us. She's open with us about, if she's got a crush with anyone, and she told us she had a crush on someone at school. And I looked at their messages, nothing was weird. I looked at all of her messages, all of her deleted messages. Nothing seemed weird. It didn't seem like she was talking to anyone. So I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like she may have been taken, because this is not like her at all, to just disappear and not let us know where she's going or who she's with.
So, straight up, first thing we hear, Jen, what is your fear? Now, for a parent whose child is missing, you should hear all manner of things. Now, the interviewer asked her about the possibility of a catfishing situation. Jen's like, no, we checked all her socials. Yes, she's got a crush on a kid, but we checked all her socials and nothing at all like that. And then she says, I feel like she's been taken. Not I fear or I'm afraid, but I feel like, so very matter of fact. She's been asked, what is your fear? Apparently Jen's got no fears here. Her daughter's missing, but she hasn't got any fears. She feels that maybe her daughter's been taken, but there's no emotion there. This is not what you would expect from a mother. First of all, even before there's an answer, I would expect to see an immediate emotional response because she's just been asked, what are your fears? And then I would expect to hear the sort of things that a mother would worry about. What if she's hurt somewhere? What if someone has abducted her and they're hurting her? Not just, I feel like she might have been taken, or whatever she said there. There's no sign of any concern from Jen whatsoever. There's no speculation about things, horrible things that could be happening to Maddie. No concern whatsoever, and that is a huge red flag. Certainly, that's a -1 in the Mother of the Year stakes.
They've taken a piece of her clothing to see if they can trace her scent. They're also taking their own vehicles. I'm not sure what type of vehicles, but they're going into the woods to search for her. But I don't feel like that's going to find anything right now. We've had people all day on that trail sending us photos to see if anything there looks familiar and like her personal belongings, and nothing is hers.
That one is concerning as well. I would expect from a mother who was concerned about her missing child, if people were searching in the woods and so far they'd come up with nothing, I'd be like, keep searching, look again, there must be some sign. You must be looking in the wrong spot. Maybe you're just not looking hard enough. A parent isn't going to turn around and say, I don't think that's going to find anything. You're going to be hopeful. You're going to be wanting to go out and have a look for yourself to find out why these fools can't find even the slightest sign that your child was in the area. But instead she's like, well, it's been searched, so I don't think that they're going to find anything. That is not what you'd expect to hear from a concerned parent. If that was my child, I'd be like, look again. Can you go back over? Can you put another group of people through? And we learnt this with the Summer Wells case when Dave from Texas Equisearch was interviewed. He spoke about how they changed teams and a second team will go back over areas to search in case the first team missed. So they will cover areas more than once. And yet, for Jen, nah, it's been searched. Don't worry about searching there anymore. You're not going to find anything. Yep, good one.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure where to go from here. I'm just contacting the news to get the word out, to get some help, because I'm desperate. I'm a wreck right now.
So you think that she's been taken against her will?
I do think so, yes.
Now, question, is this the interview that the detective was referring to when he said that the interviewer was so concerned by the way Jen was acting that they contacted the detectives about it? Or am I just making that up in my head somehow? But definitely, the words do not match the emotions. Jen is saying here that she's desperate and that she's a wreck, but she's saying it so very matter-of-factly. She certainly doesn't sound desperate. She doesn't sound like she's a wreck. There's no emotion here whatsoever. And then, when she's asked, do you think she's been taken against her will? You would once again expect a decent mother to break down here and just become too emotional to answer. Or at least to break down. But no, Jen's like, yeah, I think that, I think so.
as a mom, what's your mother's intuition telling you right now?
I'm trying to hope for the best, but I'm scared for her. I want her to be okay and I want her to be safe. I don't want her to come back harmed. I just want her back. Whatever that means. I just want her back.
Are you getting any updates from law enforcement? I mean,
So the actual question was, what is your mother's intuition telling you? She doesn't talk about what she thinks happened here, what her intuition is saying. She goes on to, I'm scared for her. I'm trying to hope for the best, and I don't want her to come back harmed. Who says that? I don't want her to come back harmed. I would expect a mother to be still clinging to hope there. I would expect to hear something like, my intuition says that she didn't go away of her own accord and that something bad has happened. But I want to be hopeful. I want her to come back safe. Not, I don't want her to come back harmed. This is not normal language that I would expect from a parent. As for the show of apparent tears, can we recognise that when she wiped the eye on the right hand side, she actually only wiped her cheek. When you are crying and you wipe your eyes, you actually wipe your eyes. She wiped one eye, kind of swiped upwards on one side, but the other side she didn't even reach her eye. She managed to smudge her mascara a little bit in the middle, but there were no tears there. This is not what you would, well, this is definitely not Mother of the Year performance, that's for sure. This is a big put on, if you ask me. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being too harsh, but there's nothing in her answer that points towards Mother's intuition. What is it that you feel? Well, apparently she feels nothing.
Jen, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Please, 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 if you have any information, contact me, contact law enforcement. Any information helps. Maddie, if you see this, please come home. Please be safe. I love you very much. If you have my Maddie, please just let her come home. We just want her home.
So you know you're in for a performance when you get that big sigh. She's asked, is there anything you'd like to add? And she just comes out with the Jen performance. All the standard things that she thinks that she should say as a mother. She's like, Maddie, please be safe. What? Maddie, I miss you. Maddie, we're looking for you. We're going to find you. We're going to bring you home. No. Maddie, please be safe. That's all she's got to say for her daughter. And then, if you've got my Maddie, please bring her home. Okay, yep, that's a fair call. But where's the emotion? Where's the pleading that's occurring here? There's no pleading. I'm sorry, but to me, she does not sound like a mother who really cares. Now, I will say that, of course, people react in these situations differently. And so it's probably not fair of me having never been in such a situation, to sound so judgmental. But to me, there are just so many red flags there. I'm not convinced at all.
We were all going to sleep together in the same bed, but I needed some good sleep. And I got a new job recently. I haven't been well rested. I needed some sleep. So I asked, hey, can you guys go to the guest bedroom upstairs?
So in that one 18-second clip, I counted her saying I 6 times. Her main concern was for Jen, not for her daughter. She had started a new job, she needed to take her meds, she wanted to get some sleep, so she sent them upstairs. There was never one thought for her own daughter whatsoever. Now, I think many of us have either been there or know someone who's been there, where you're starting out, you've got young kids, and you want the best for your kids, so you make sacrifices to make sure that your kids are getting the best. Well, that's certainly not Jen making a sacrifice for her daughter. She could have slept in the morning. She could have, even if she was so insistent on Stefan taking Maddie to school, even though she was at her appointment half an hour after Maddie needed to be at school, meaning that essentially she only had an extra half hour's sleep in anyway. But never once was there any concern here for her daughter. This is not how a concerned mother should act.
Did you hear around 7 or 8?
I heard noises in the kitchen, but I'm not sure,
Not sure who it was exactly.
Who it was exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
It could have been any of the roommates.
But you didn't see her leave Monday morning. Were you still in bed or still in your room?
I was still asleep, yeah.
Gotcha.
So she was awake enough to hear noises in the kitchen, but didn't bother either calling out to see if it was Maddie, or maybe pulling her phone out for a little while so that she could wait till Maddie came in to go through to the bathroom to do her makeup and hair and everything, so she could say good morning to her. No, all she did was go straight back to sleep. This from a parent who said that the reason that Stearns actually came up was because she wanted to spend more time with her daughter, and if he wasn't there, Maddie would need to stay with her mother, and she wouldn't get to see her as much. And yet, instead of waiting for her daughter to come through the room to get herself ready for school, she just goes straight back to sleep. Because, let's be real, she knew her daughter was not coming through the room to get herself ready for school in her bathroom.
I waited for the rest of the day until 2:30 to leave. I wait in the car line, so I'm first in line to pick her up.
Yeah, that car line can be vicious. So you left approximately 2:30.
Yeah.
And pickups around 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now when you got there at 4, then what happened?
I waited in the car line for about 10 minutes, and she never came out. So I thought maybe I missed her. I couldn't remember if I told her I was picking her up from school that day or if she had to walk to the office.
Okay.
So I went to the office to see if she made it.
Now, yeah, I know a lot of this has already been said, but for the purposes of this video, I wanted to highlight the differences between what a good mother would do and what a bad mother would do. So, yes, there is some repetition here. So, to the person who commented in my last video, this has already all been said. Why don't you go and listen to some other creators? Well, this is me sharing my thoughts. If it's already been said, well and good. You can always go and listen elsewhere. Back to this. Seriously, first of all, let's correct her. She didn't wait 10 minutes. The school bell goes at 4 minutes past 4. Now, if you have a look at the school documents, they first of all let out the kids who are walking and who are going on bikes. And then they let out the kids who are going in cars. Meaning that let's add another couple of minutes there after 4:04 and say, okay, let's say another 2 minutes, even if we just add another 1 minute to 4:05. She's saying she left at 4:10. So she waited somewhere between 4 and 6 minutes. 6 minutes is being generous because, like I said, the kids who walk and the kids who go on their bikes are let out before the other kids, meaning that Maddie wouldn't have been one of the first kids out. She's happy to wait for an hour so she can be the first car in line. Is that to show off your brand new car, your fancy 2-year-old car? Or is this the first time you did that, Jen? I'm sure there's no positive reason why she's doing that for Maddie. It's about Jen. Because she gave Maddie somewhere between 4 to 6 minutes to get out to the car and then left. What mother does that? I mean, we've discussed this. Why not just go and park and go into the school? But no, waits 4 minutes after sitting there for an hour. Surely you could be bothered sitting there for another 15, 20 minutes. Or just going and parking your car after 10 minutes and going and finding out. Presumably, she had her own phone with her. Maddie knows what the car looks like. Well, if I'm waiting to pick up my niece at the train station, I'll be sitting there on my phone. Yesterday, sitting there, found a parking spot, so I had texted her and said, this is where I'm parked. And I'm just scrolling through comments from my most recent video. I was completely unaware that I'd been sitting there long enough for the train to pull in, my niece to get off the train and actually come, and next thing I know she's trying to open the car door, which I had forgot to unlock. It's not hard to entertain yourself for a period of time while you're waiting for someone in the car. And I think most decent parents would choose to wait, or would go and park elsewhere and go into the school to find out what's going on.
She never did. I drove around a little bit.
Okay.
I drove around a little bit. Looking for her. I went back to the school. The school was closed at this point. I wanted to speak to somebody at the office to see if anybody could tell me if she had been there. I think at this point I had called, before I went to the school, I actually called her best friend and I said, with you, I can't find her. She didn't walk to the office and she wasn't at school when I went to pick her up. She said she never made it. She's it's a first or second period. And I'm like, what do you mean? I dropped her off. We dropped her off close to school. And she said she didn't make it to first or second period. I said, please check with the rest of your friends.
Now, there seems to be some discrepancies over what time Jen rang Maddie's best friend. But, according to the documents in the timeline that is based on phone calls, camera footage, etc., it says 4:30. So at the very earliest, Jen rang Maddie's best friend at 4:30. That was after supposedly driving all round the neighbourhood, going back to her mother's office. And then she decided to go back to the school. Now, I'm sorry, but if you're such a dimwit that you leave the school after 4 to 6 minutes, drive to your mother's office and are told way too early she wouldn't be here yet, well, I would drive straight back along the route that I know that she walks along. I would park up at the school and walk in and speak to someone in the office. Given that her mother's office is like 3 minutes away, she could have been there by 20 past 4, and you cannot tell me that there would not have been staff still in the office at 20 past 4. That's barely 15 minutes after the kids get out. But no, she faffs around, doesn't go back to the school till much later with Yolanda, and I suspect that it was Yolanda's idea, not Jen's idea, to go back to the school. According to Yolanda's interview, there was the after-school activities going on. They went and looked in there. There was no sign of Maddie. But certainly, where's the parental concern here? Not only did she not park up and go into the school, but she faffed around for a good 20 minutes or so before finally heading back to the school at some point in time. And I think we can presume that it was probably after 5 that she headed back to the school, given that she's claiming that there was no one around. So I think it would be fair to say that right now she's still losing points in terms of Mother of the Year status.
I emailed one of her teachers. Her teacher texted me her attendance for the whole day and told me she wasn't in school at all. That's when I knew something was wrong, and I freaked out.
Okay, so apparently it took her well over half an hour to figure out something was wrong, because according to records, or according to the interview with the teacher, I think it was about 4:46 that the teacher got back to her. It was actually after the 911 call was made, but apparently before this, Jen wasn't concerned, based on what she's saying here. For me, if it was my child and I had realised that she hadn't come out of school, I'd followed her usual route to the mother's office, still hadn't seen her. That's when I'd be starting to think something was wrong. That's when I'd be doubling back, straight back to the school, parking up, heading into the office and going, what the heck's going on here? It certainly wouldn't take me over half an hour to start to panic and think something is wrong. Once again, that's a big fail in terms of being a decent parent.
Has she ever, in the totality of, I guess, everything, as long as she's been, ever gone off to spend time by herself, or gone to hang out at a park by herself, or something to kind of clear her own head?
So there's a lake right behind this building.
Mm-hmm.
She'll sometimes sit at the dock by the lake, but I check on her often.
So if we take her at her word, then we can believe that she's being a responsible parent, And while her daughter is sitting by the lake collecting her thoughts, she frequently checks on her. I'll let you decide whether or not you believe Jen in this instance. Does this give her one parenting point? Or is she just saying it because she thinks this is how a responsible parent should act?
Alright. When's the last time you got in any kind of trouble at home?
I'm gonna say a few weeks ago.
What was that for?
I don't think. If she gets a yelling, or if she gets in trouble for anything, it's for her disorganization and messiness. How she leaves laundry on the floor,
Okay.
her room's a mess. She keeps her space very disorganized. So I kind of get on top of her. Do I remember the actual argument? No.
Okay, that particular comment really grated on me. She's saying that Maddie gets into trouble if she's disorganised or if she's left stuff on the floor. And we've heard this from Maddie's teacher also. The thing is, you need to teach your child these things. And you need to set an example. Many, many years ago, when I first started working, my boss said to me that she would not ask any of her employees to do something that she was not prepared to do for herself. Now, obviously, that's a work situation as opposed to a home situation, but it's something that I think is important, and I think it is of good value to hold. You look in Jen's bathroom, and there's clothes all over the floor, and they weren't all Maddie's clothes. You look in her room, and it's chaos. So for her to then get angry with Maddie and have a fight with Maddie because Maddie is following her own example and leaving clothes on the floor and not putting things in the right spot, being disorganised. You know what? Maddie's room looked way more organised than Jen's room. So it's hypocritical, and it's certainly not a sign of good parenting.
When I went through her text messages back on February 2nd or 3rd, she had expressed to a friend that, I was crazy. I was acting, being nuts.
Almost old stuff to say.
Yeah, apparently I don't remember this in this conversation. I remember saying this once, but not in February. But she had said, if she continues to behave this way or not listen, when she turns 18, I'm not going to want to live with her.
Okay.
Or also I would ship her off to her dad's.
Oh.
But I never.
Okay. This may sound corny, but it is so true. There is no bad child. There are bad behaviours. You can dislike the behaviours, but not dislike the child. Maddie was a teenager. Maddie needed security and love. To be told that she was probably going to be thrown out of home when she was 18, that's not a positive message for a 12-year-old girl. That's not providing security and love. To be told she was going to be shipped off to live with her father, well, maybe for Maddie there was a little bit of hope behind that. But the message there was still the same clear message. You're not important enough. I don't love you enough to put in the effort to try and make things work. I don't want you around. That's a clear message that Jen was giving her 12-year-old daughter. That certainly isn't Mother of the Year material.
No, I know. The thing is, I started talking to her about World War III. I was talking about, I'm like, hey, this is going on in Palestine and Israel right now.
Oh, so you're talking to her about the wars.
I was telling her, I was talking to her about just what's happening politically, and I'm like, you know, I don't know what that means for us, but we'll see what happens. But I've talked to her about World War III, so that's what I'm just saying.
How long ago was that? I mean, is that something that might have impacted her?
Yeah, I feel like that's why when I read that conversation, I'm like, oh, that's directly related to me talking to her about what's happening in Israel, Palestine, and the potential World War III that might happen from that.
Okay.
And that's why she said she wanted to go live in the woods.
Okay.
Okay, so kids do pick up on a lot of things that are going on around them. And so it is quite possible that Maddie had picked up on this whole notion of the possibility of wars and stuff without having it explicitly explained to her. I get that. I can remember when I was about 14 being really, really afraid of nuclear war, because that's back when the Cold War was occurring, and it was just the mindset back then. And it was a scary thought. That wasn't from any conversation with my own parents. That was from just being aware of the news, listening to the radio when my mum was listening to the radio, watching the news at night when my parents were watching the news, picking up on what was going on in the world around me. But I never had a conversation with my parents about it. And I suspect that had I done so, because my parents were supportive parents, they probably would have assured me that it's not going to happen. Media likes to blow things up and make it sound way more scary. Because as a teenager, you've got so many immediate worries that you don't need to be worrying about whether or not the world is going to end. So to me, the fact that Jen had this conversation with Maddie, and that she didn't use that as a way of reassuring her that, well, here in Florida, you're going to be pretty safe. Instead, she put fear into her daughter. So much so that this child was apparently telling everyone that she was going to go live in the woods. Of course, I question this because the other version we've heard of this is Maddie saying that she was going to go live in the woods when she was 13. And that this had something to do with her relationship with her mother. Which I think is probably closer to the truth. Either way, these kind of conversations with a 12-year-old child should be about reassurance. Even if you as an adult personally believe that there is a risk of a war coming to your country, children's brains don't have the capacity to deal with processing that kind of notion. And it can become such a scary thing for them to deal with. So, to me, every time I hear this part of Jen's speech, it just makes me cringe. You're traumatising a child for no reason whatsoever.
So, one thing that I think I may have misheard you say earlier, but I want to make sure that I have it absolutely clear, is on Sunday night y'all went to bed around 11, and the reason that you sent her upstairs with Stefan was because you had work in the morning, was it? Or you just started a new job?
I just started a new job and I haven't been sleeping well.
Oh.
I take psychiatric meds every night for my bipolar disorder, and if I don't take them the right way, eat, and go to sleep on time,
They don't work.
They don't work.
Gotcha.
So I was just like, hey, I really need these meds, because I forgot them the night before. I forgot them, I think, Saturday night. So Sunday I was not myself. So I asked, I'm like, hey, I need to be medicated. I need to sleep. Can you take care of the morning duties so I can go and sleep?
Gotcha. All right. No, I just wanted to make sure I understood you right, because I was like, did you have work in the morning? Or I didn't write that down, and I wanted to make sure I heard you okay.
Okay, there's been more than enough said about that already, but I just want to point out that that clip was a minute long. That was a full minute of Jen justifying why she was more important than her own child.
Does she have dirty laundry or like a
The
hamper?
her most recent dirty laundry is on my bathroom floor, and we've walked around it. We haven't touched it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but 24 hours later, and her dirty laundry is still lying on the bathroom floor. Wouldn't you at least, even if you were intelligent enough to think, okay, that they might want her dirty laundry, so I need to make sure that I don't wash it, wouldn't you at least maybe empty the laundry hamper, wash everything that's in the laundry hamper, because apparently that was a mix of clean and dirty clothes, and then put all her clothes in the laundry hamper? See, here's the thing. If I had a missing child and I knew officers were coming to my house, I certainly wouldn't want it to look like a pigsty, to look like a house where I had no control over my living environment and was clearly not a good parent. A quick tidy up wouldn't have taken much effort. Like I said, empty the laundry hamper, put all that in the wash, put her dirty clothes from Sunday night into the laundry hamper on their own, wash your own clothes that have been lying on the bathroom floor for 2 days. But no, they just walked around all those clothes on the bathroom floor. I can recognise that when it comes to mental health, sometimes it is difficult to cope. But when there is a child involved, you need to either learn to cope, find ways of getting things done, or get help with the situation. Maddie could have been quite happy. She could have been thriving at Yolanda's house, by the sounds of it. She probably would have been quite happy living in Texas with Tyler. Jen couldn't even keep a organised home environment for her daughter. Now, I apologise if there's anyone out there who's listening to this and thinking, well, my home's not perfect. Yeah, when you have kids, there's going to be chaos in the home. But for the most part, you're going to at least try and keep an environment for them that is not chaotic. And what I see from looking at those pictures of Jen's house, from listening to her talking about we just walked around the clothes that were left on the floor, to me that sounds like Maddie was living in a chaotic environment. And look, to be fair, I'm just going to say this. If you find yourself in a situation where you are trying to parent and you feel that maybe you're living in a slightly chaotic environment and struggling to provide the structure your child needs, there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in saying that at this point in time you're not functioning as you should do and you need help. At the very least, you need help so that you can provide a secure home for your child. No shame in that whatsoever. You're not going to have protective services turn up and try and take your child away. if you are admitting that you're struggling and asking for help. More likely it's going to occur if you just bury your head in the sand and ignore that you've got a problem.
Oh, and then yesterday she had her, or Sunday she had her birthday party, right?
Sunday she had her birthday party.
Okay, what time was that party at?
It started at 3 o'clock.
Okay, from 3 to what time?
I'm not sure. I wasn't there. I was at work.
Oh, okay, you weren't there. But I know my sister home around 8:30.
Uh-huh.
Now, she actually mentions in a different interview that Maddie's birthday had been organised before she got this job. It shouldn't take that much effort when you are offered a new job and told this is the training, to turn around and say, look, I already have this prior commitment. My daughter is turning 13 and we've planned a birthday party for her. I would imagine that the majority of employers would be reasonable enough to say, yep, 13, that's a big, important birthday. I can understand that you would want to be there. We can work around it. She had the next day off. Couldn't she have negotiated to work that day instead? And the other thing is, I feel sad that Maddie's had this party where she's been surrounded by people, and then Jen's decided that it was okay for her to be then basically dropped off at home on her own. Sure, Stefan turned up 10 minutes later, but that's a whole other situation, which I still think of as bad parenting. But why not just let her stay the night at her grandmother's house? You weren't going to be home for another 2 hours. You supposedly only spent half an hour with her. She could have been somewhere where she had company after her birthday, where she could still share her excitement over her birthday and not just be home alone going through the motions. Sure, I know at that age there was one night a week when I would be dropped off home from choir practice. I'd get home around 7 o'clock. Mum wouldn't get home till around 9 o'clock. I'd get myself dinner, get myself organised, and to me it was nice to have that quiet time when I had the house all to myself. But we're talking about an important day. It just seems sad to me that she's had this big birthday party, she's been surrounded by family. She didn't have to be sent home to be alone. I'd like to know what other people think about this, because, I mean, some people might think, well, that's fine. That's what you do. But to me, it just seems sad that for the sake of Jen seeing her daughter for half an hour, because apparently she was too lazy to get out of bed the following morning, that Maddie, instead of being at her aunt's or her grandmother's place, where she had company, had to be sent home to an empty house.
And what about Stefan? Bedroom number 4. Okay. Is it normal for both of them to sleep in the same room?
Sometimes when I really need a good night's sleep, I will send them upstairs. But when also a lot of times we will sleep together in the king size bed.
I think we've well and truly established that this is certainly not the act that you would expect from a caring, responsible mother. Nobody should be sending a 12-year-old child upstairs to sleep alone in a bedroom with a 37-year-old man.
Okay, what time did you wake up? I'm going to say around 8 o'clock in the morning, Stefan came into the room and was trying to put the leash on the dog. Somewhere between, I'm going to say somewhere between, he came into the room somewhere between 8 and 8:15. He came in to put the leash on the dog, and I got up to try to help him because my dog is kind of a nervous dog and I didn't want him to pee on the bed.
So she got up to help him with the dog. She wanted Maddie at home to be able to spend extra time with Maddie because she wasn't getting enough time because of work. She was able to get up to help with the dog, but she couldn't take an extra couple of minutes to go and say good morning to her daughter, given that she was already up. Yep, definitely losing a lot of mothering points there. Of course, personally, I believe that the reason that she didn't bother getting up then was because she knew that her daughter wasn't in a position for her to say good morning to her. Either that, or she is the most narcissistic person on the entire planet. It just seems so wrong to me that a parent would be woken up, they would get up for long enough to try and help with their dog, but being already awake and already up, they wouldn't want to go and say good morning to their daughter, especially after not even bothering to go to her birthday party the day before. Definitely no parent points there.
What did he call you for? To let me know, that he didn't go to McDonald's as planned. He had asked her multiple times if she wanted to stop at McDonald's because that was the plan the night before. That they were going to wake up early. He was going to take her to McDonald's, do like a special McDonald's breakfast, and then drop her off at school early because she wanted to get there a little early. But on his way to school, she was very sleepy and wanted to sleep in the car. And she said she did not want to do McDonald's. She just wanted to be dropped off.
Okay. Now, we've heard that McDonald's narrative so many times. But you know what we haven't heard? We haven't heard a mother expressing concern over the fact that her daughter went to school without breakfast. Sure, Stefan invents this pastry that he magically produced while he was in the car, supposedly. That doesn't feature in Jen's narrative anywhere. If we go by Jen's narrative, Maddie didn't have breakfast. And apparently Jen was utterly unconcerned. Because in telling this Macca's story, every single time, not once does she express concern over Maddie heading off to start her school day without having had breakfast. For a child who has ADHD, that should be even more of a concern, especially because if the child has had medications, they're going to work better if the child has breakfast. And I know for many ADHD medications, during the day the child might not be hungry when their medications are working because they can suppress appetite. So in which case, breakfast would be all the more important, because it may be that the rest of the day she's not going to eat very much at all. Now, why was there no concern over her daughter going to school without breakfast? And don't get me started on the meds. I'll come back to them.
And then you guys went looking for her, right?
Yes.
Where did you look? Like, did you drive somewhere? Did you walk? Like, where did you go look for her?
Okay. So, after her best friend called me, actually, or I talked to her best friend on the phone, I went back to the school to see, let me check her official attendance. Let me see what's going on. They were already closed. Nobody was at the school. So I searched by backtracking into the school and then coming back out and seeing that there were no kids at the school at all. So then I drove office. Everything was driving. And then I think that response from her teacher at that point. But
So she finishes with an and then a sigh and an because I think she's realised that she's basically said she's not really searched. What she's saying here is that she went from the school to her mum's place, back to the school, drove around that area a little bit. Now, here's the thing. If you've just found out that your daughter did not go to school that day, why are you going to search around the school and around your mother's office? Wouldn't you go back to the spot where she was supposedly dropped off? Why was she not bringing up Stearns and saying, where did you drop Maddie off this morning? And going to that location, getting out of your car and searching for any sign that your daughter had been there. That's what I would expect a normal parent to do. But instead she just comes up with this BS story which basically involves driving back and forth between the school and her mother's office, which is not where her daughter was supposedly dropped off that morning. To me, that actually suggests that she knew there was no point in looking. When you're missing something, you go to the last place that you saw it. When you're missing a child, you go to the last place where someone saw the child. Immediately, her first question should have been, Stefan, where did you drop Maddie off this morning? And she should have been on foot in that area trying to find her daughter. To me, that says a lot.
Did you come back to the apartment at any point yesterday once you realized she was missing?
Stefan was at home waiting for us to get back. And then when I told him something was wrong, she never made it to school, he completely hauled it back to me. And then we all stood there waiting for the cops to show up, and they didn't show up till like 7:30. It took them a while to respond. I think they were looking for other missing kids around the area too. But yeah, no, we did not come back home until we were done with the police. We were done with everything. There was nothing else for us to do.
Now, according to the documents, she actually did go home at around 6 p.m. And I would actually expect a parent whose child is missing, after checking the area where their child had been dropped off, at that point, that's when I'd be calling the police. But I also would be going back and checking the apartment myself to see if there's any things there that could give me any kind of clue as to what might have happened with her daughter. Now, I think it was Natalie, the flatmate, mentioned that Maddie spent a lot of time on her computer, not on her phone, on her computer. Wouldn't you want to go and fire that up and have a look to see if maybe there were some conversations occurring on there that maybe weren't showing on her phone that might give you a clue. Wouldn't you want to go and have a look in her room and see if there's anything that she's taken with her? Why would you just go and stand for 2 hours in your mother's office? And then, after they finished with the police, they just went home because there was nothing else to do. I'd be backtracking again. I'd be heading back to the location. At that stage, Stearns had joined her. Wouldn't you be saying, I want you to take me now and show me exactly where you dropped her off, so I can have another look for myself, because I already looked earlier when I realised she was missing. But now I want to have another look with you showing me the exact spot where you dropped her off. But no, they just went home because there was nothing else to do.
Where was her phone when all of this was happening?
With me.
How did you get the phone if you never came back here?
I took it with me to go pick her up from school. I was going to give it to her when she got in the car and be like, listen, you forgot your phone again, and let her play on it. I'll do that sometimes when she forgets it. I bring the phone with me and I just give it to her afterwards.
Okay, so the cell tower data shows us that she actually did take Maddie's phone with her when she went to pick her up from school, as she claims. So, and she's saying, well, I do that so she can play on it. Here we're supposed to be convinced that she's the good parent, and that while Maddie forgot the phone, she at least had the foresight to grab it so Maddie could play with it on the way home. Few things with this. First of all, we've heard from the detectives that Maddie actually didn't leave her phone at home all that often. Also, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. Anytime Jen comes up with one of these statements that tries to make her sound like a good parent, I find it hard to swallow when there's so many other things that point in the opposite direction. So my question would be, what is the real reason why you took her phone with you then?
I was going to say it was like somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock p.m.
Did you guys go back out after that?
Stefan went back out.
Apparently it was far more important for Jen to have something to eat and go to sleep rather than to head back out to search for her daughter. Now, honestly, what parent is going to do that? Now, if I try and put myself in her shoes, I've just waited 2 hours for police officers to come to my mother's office so I can report my child missing. I've then spent an hour answering questions, probably answering the same questions for different police officers. It's 8 or 9 o'clock. At that point in time, to the best of my knowledge, my child has been missing for at least 12 hours. I'm just going to calmly go home, have something to eat, take some meds and go to sleep? Does that sound like what you would expect a parent to do if they were concerned about their child being missing? After having to wait 2 hours for the officers and another hour going through explaining what happened, I would be hell-bent on getting back out there and searching where my child was last seen. I can't understand how someone would just go home and go to bed. Okay, well, I've reported my child missing. Nothing else I can do. I need a good night's sleep now. See you later, folks. Not my problem now.
Tonight, what we're gonna do is, I know we already secured your house, right? We asked everybody to leave. So, another thing that I'm gonna ask is if you guys can find somewhere else to stay for the night, because we're gonna have Kissimmee out here at your apartment for the rest of the night, because the people that come and like take pictures and all that other stuff are not going to respond until the morning. Okay, so nobody can go into the house for the rest of the night until the house gets, we need to take pictures and do other stuff with the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
And unfortunately, because you guys have such a big apartment, it's not something that only one person does. Like, we don't do that, right? We have our forensics unit come out. And it's not something that one person can do by herself. So she has to wait until people come in, because they're on call after midnight, right? So she has to wait for the other people to come in the morning, and then they're all going to come in as a unit and try to get it done as quick as possible.
Okay.
I need to go back into the house.
Mm-hmm.
I have medication that I have to take in order to be like normal. Is there a possibility that I can go back in there and get my meds? Yes. Give me a few minutes, and then we'll try to figure out how we can get your medication. Okay, but that's something that we can definitely get.
So basically, she's being told here that they are now escalating the investigation. You can't go back into the house because we're sending forensic units in. At that point in time, she should be freaking out. Why are you sending forensic units in when my child went missing on the way to school? What's going on here? Why aren't you out searching around where she was dropped off? No, none of that. Her only concern is that before they lock down the house, she needs her meds. Once again, it's all about Jen. She's got so disinterested in the investigation that she's not overly bothered that they're locking down her house, that they're not out searching around the last place that her daughter was seen. No, her concern is for her meds. This is not what you would expect from a concerned parent.
Real quick, I don't remember if Detective Tagler asked, but yesterday when you guys were out looking, do you remember what time you were out looking till?
So yesterday, I stayed in the office. My family went out searching.
I don't even need to say it, do I? Happy for her family to go out searching, but couldn't be bothered doing so herself. Not what I would expect from a parent.
When the deputies first talked to you, when you were reporting her missing,
Yeah.
you remember writing a statement?
Yes.
Okay. In that statement, you say you saw Maddie.
I saw. I know. I misremembered. I didn't see her.
Okay.
I wanted to believe I saw her, but I didn't.
But when you're talking to the deputy on his body cam, you describe what she's wearing.
Because she had picked it out the night before.
Okay.
One word: abstraction. I think that says it all. If she was truly concerned about her missing child, she would want to give as accurate information as she possibly could. So the fact that she said that, oh well, I wanted to believe it, meaning that she didn't believe it. She knew full well she didn't see her daughter, but she still wrote it on her statement. That is obstruction. That is not what I would expect from a concerned parent. Not the slightest bit what you would expect from a concerned parent. And I've said this multiple times before, I call BS on this whole notion of I knew what she was wearing because she picked them out the night before. Because for starters, Maddie pretty much always wore the same thing to school. But not only that, you hear in the 911 call, when Letitia first calls up to report Maddie missing, they ask what she was wearing. Letitia turns around and asks Jen what Maddie was wearing, and Jen has to go and find out. So she's gone from, in the 911 call, not knowing what Maddie was wearing, to quite boldly in the body-worn camera footage claiming that this is what Maddie was wearing. So in the space of 2 hours, she's gone from being utterly clueless to knowing what Maddie was wearing because Maddie set her clothes out the night before. If you are concerned about your missing child, why are you going to lie to officers? Why are you going to give contradictory statements? This is not the behaviour of a good parent or a concerned parent.
I had gastric sleeve surgery a few years ago, so I'm vitamin deficient, so they give me some high doses of medications to keep my vitamins balanced.
Okay, so she's saying there that she had gastric sleeve surgery a few years earlier. Now, to me, that trumps the whole Botox thing. Obviously, I'm not familiar with what those sort of things cost in America, but it is my understanding that you guys don't have like a Medicare system in Australia that covers the cost of those sorts of things, meaning that I would imagine that kind of surgery could be quite costly. So we're looking at a person who has a 2-year-old car. She's had gastric sleeve surgery. We know that she's had at least one Botox appointment planned that was, what, $380? Seems like she's quite comfortable spending large quantities of money on herself. And yet, she couldn't pay rent for a room for her daughter. That is the ultimate in selfishness, if you ask me. Instead of upgrading to a brand new car, even if your car's dead, get something that's a few years old. That could pay rent for your daughter for a few years, the money that you saved. Instead of spending God knows how much on gastric sleeve surgery, put that money towards paying rent for your daughter so that she can have her own room. Because a 12-year-old child needs their own space. And yet, Jen had far more important things to do with her money, apparently.
And the thing is, the night before, we had discussed, oh, Maddie, maybe he should leave a little bit earlier than normal so that you can go get breakfast with him at McDonald's. That would be a really cool day to start a Monday right after your birthday, having McDonald's at breakfast. And she's like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. So, they were supposed to have gone to McDonald's, but he told me they didn't.
Now, here we're supposed to believe that she's the cool parent who comes up with all these fantastic ideas, and she wanted her daughter to have a special treat for her birthday. Isn't she just such a great parent for coming up with this idea? The thing is, this is the only time she says this, when she's repeating the Macca's narrative. And in the interview on the 18th of April, she actually says that she didn't know anything about this idea of going to McDonald's. So she's inserted herself here because clearly she thinks it makes her look good. But she is outright lying. And she even sounds fake when she's saying it. This is someone who is trying to create the impression of being the good parent and saying things that she thinks a good parent would say or do. Well, no, because a good parent would say, well, hang on, I've got this appointment that's pretty much at the same location as Maddie's school. It's on the Town Loop Boulevard, which is right near Maddie's school. And I want to be at my appointment 15 minutes early, which means I'm going to be arriving before 10 o'clock. And Maddie starts school at 9:30. Why don't I just get up half an hour earlier, and then I can drop Maddie off at school, and I can just wait a little bit longer for my appointment. Or I could reschedule my appointment so I can drop Maddie off at school and still get up half an hour earlier. Because at the end of the day, what is an extra half an hour sleep when you're claiming that you never get to see enough of your child because of your work schedule? When you're claiming that your boyfriend or your ex-boyfriend came up to stay so that you could have her at home with you, he could help you out and you could spend more time with her. This is not someone who knows how to be a good parent.
Alright,
If you didn't work, what would your typical day look like?
My entire day was focused around Maddie.
On a normal basis?
I would wake up first thing in the morning, make sure she was ready, make her breakfast, get her backpack and water bottle ready. If she's taking lunch, get her some lunch ready. This is me doing this while she's getting ready. Walk the dog, come back, make sure she takes all her medications before school, take her to school, come back. I typically have a bunch of doctor's appointments to go to often, so I'm either at doctor's appointments. If I'm not at doctor's appointments, I'm just here at home, probably napping, resting, just waiting until it's time to pick her up from school again. She was my entire life. Everything I did was, my everyday was for her.
Yeah, right. Jen, the super mum. So she gets Maddie organised. She does everything for Maddie. She takes her to school, and then she has a few appointments, but she spends the rest of the day just waiting for that moment when she can go and pick up Maddie from school again. And yet, she's telling us, on the other hand, that she was so desperate for a night's sleep that she sent Maddie off to sleep with a predator. Her world evolved around Jen Soto, not around Maddie. And yet she does contradict herself. She talks about Maddie getting her drink ready and putting it in her bag and stuff like that, which also didn't happen, which I've covered in another video. But can we recognise here that these claims of being supermum totally contradict every other thing we hear from Jen? And a big question I have from this is that if she is a supermum who has to make sure that her daughter is sent off to school and she's got everything and she's had her meds. Well, see, Maddie's meds are kept in Jen's bedroom. So how come she was happy for Maddie to apparently go to school that Monday morning without her meds? Because clearly, if we're to believe Jen's story, it never occurred to her to question the fact that Maddie didn't come in to get her meds, didn't come in to brush her hair or her teeth or do her makeup. But she's super mum, right?
Maddie has always slept in the bed with me. She's always slept in my room. Only when we lived in that apartment in Northport did she have her own bedroom, and we could afford for her to have her own room. So that was the only time she's actually had her own room.
Now, naturally, if you've got siblings, there's a good chance you're going to be sharing a room with a sibling growing up. But we're talking about a little girl who, at 12 years of age, did not have her own bedroom. This is something that to me is terribly, terribly wrong. Every child needs somewhere that is their own space. Not somewhere with a divider where basically that's the only privacy you have, but a real bedroom with a real door that you can shut. And hey, if Jen could not afford rent for her and Maddie to have a bedroom, she should have been the one having that makeshift room out in the living area and given Maddie her own room in the master bedroom. When you're a parent, you make sacrifices for your children. They get no choice in who their parents are. They can't go out and earn money to pay rent to put themselves in their own bedroom. It's up to a parent to provide for their children. And if that means you sleep on a couch or you sleep in a makeshift bedroom so that your child can have their own bedroom, that's exactly what you do.
At this point, Maddie pretty much slept with me all the time. I think I can count maybe on one hand how many times she's gone upstairs to sleep with him alone, because I wasn't comfortable with it. I was like, no, this it doesn't look right, like it just doesn't seem right, like I'm not comfortable with it. Maddie, you gotta sleep with me. And I've told him that. But there were times that they begged for sleepovers, like, please, we just want to stay up late watching movies. And I would be too tired to stay up late, so I would say, fine, go ahead and do it. But just this once, like...
When did you start becoming comfortable with it?
I don't know if I was ever comfortable with it.
But you told them to go Sunday night to go sleep together.
I did. That was a selfish move on my part. It's because I wanted a good night's sleep. I didn't want her kicking me or rolling into me or waking me up, or to hear her alarm so that it woke me up. I wanted to keep sleeping until I needed to sleep, because I just had not, with my training schedule, I have not had a good night's sleep. My medication was out of whack. I was feeling funny and not like myself, and I knew that I needed another night's sleep and my medication in my body like ASAP, so I needed to go to bed. So I wasn't even comfortable sending her that night, but I just did it for my own selfish reasons.
Well, there's one bit of truth from Jen, possibly the only bit of truth. She sent them upstairs for her own selfish reasons. She's just given a really, really long justification of why, in her head, it was okay to send them upstairs to sleep together. He says to her, when did it become acceptable? And there's a really, really long pause, and she's like, I don't think I ever considered it acceptable. I'm paraphrasing there, but that's essentially what she's saying, which is complete utter bullshit, because then she comes out with this really long justification showing you this is why it was acceptable on this occasion. Because I was more important than my daughter. My own selfish needs were far more important than my daughter's safety. That is what she has told us. But, going back to the start of it there, when she's talking about how it started, and she says it didn't look right and it didn't seem right, and she wasn't comfortable with it. What is she telling us there? She's essentially saying that she really didn't care. She cared about how it looked. How it looked to people on the outside. We know that Deb Stearns had made a comment to her that it wasn't right just having them sleeping in the same bed, all three of them. Jen knows, she's smart enough to know that to an outside observer, it didn't look right. And that is the first thing she says. Not, I didn't like it, I didn't want it to happen, but it didn't look right. Jen's worried about appearances, not about doing the right thing for her child. It didn't seem right to the outside observer. It probably didn't seem right. I believe when she said that she was not comfortable, I believe that what she was talking about is she was not comfortable with the fact that this is what other people were going to see. I think if she lived in a house with no flatmates, and it was just her, Stefan and Maddie, she probably wouldn't be saying it didn't look right. She would probably be trying to avoid saying that it even occurred. Perhaps. But the fact that she starts out with it didn't look right, to me says, for her, the most important thing here is appearances. What it looks like for people looking in. Not the most important thing here is that you shouldn't be sending your 12-year-old daughter upstairs to sleep with a 37-year-old man. This is not the words of a decent parent. Full stop, end of story. And we all know this. But, you know, for the purpose of this video, we're talking about whether or not Jen had even a semblance of being a good parent. And I think this shows us something important. For Jen, the appearance of being a good parent is what counts. You hear these stories that she tells detectives where she's like the hero parent. You know, her whole day evolves around Maddie. She does this full-on marathon before 8 o'clock in the morning, doing all this preparation for Maddie before school, while Maddie gets dressed and lies back down and has another nap. She wants people to believe that she's the good parent. But when you scratch the surface, that's all it is. Smoke and mirrors.
Did you know he's never said anything to you or anything about it?
If anything, I've always told him that my biggest fear is that this would turn into a Woody Allen situation where the stepdaughter or the dad grooms the child and the child turns 18 and ends up running away with him I told him, like, that was my biggest fear, and I don't ever want that happening. Like, you can't do that to me. Like,
Again, she's not talking about fears over him grooming her daughter to the point where when her daughter turns 18, the pair of them run off together. No, Jen's concern here is she doesn't want to be left behind. She doesn't want them to do that to her. Meaning, she doesn't want that kind of rejection. She really is not concerned about what might be happening between him and her daughter. Definitely not what you would hear from a good parent. And can we just acknowledge too that what parent is going to have this at the forefront of their mind anyway? To me, this suggests guilty knowledge, especially given that he had just essentially asked her, did you have any idea of what was going on with Stefan and Maddie? And what does she come out with? Woody Allen situation. She's essentially telling us here, yeah, I knew. And I didn't want to be abandoned because of them shacking up together and leaving me behind.
Why would you say that to him?
because I never trusted. I grew up being told never trust a man. My mom put that in my body, never trust a man. And like, I did not completely 100% trust the man, but
So she didn't 100% trust him. That to me says one of two things. Either she really didn't care about sending her daughter up to sleep alone with this man that she supposedly didn't trust, or that at some point in time she's had some kind of frontal lobotomy and can't figure out that if you can't trust the man, you probably shouldn't be sending your daughter upstairs to sleep with him. I'm going with the first one, because from what I'm seeing, she's actually quite manipulative and quite good at basically saying what she thinks she needs to say. To her, by saying, well, I didn't trust the man, probably in her mind, that's like what a responsible parent would be like. She's being hyper-vigilant for her child. I'm not going to trust him, because what parent would trust a 37-year-old man to sleep alone with their child? But hey, I'm still going to do it.
Here's another picture from the dumpster in Venetian Bay of Stefan throwing away trash.
what day?
That's going to be Monday morning, probably around 7:45.
Has the dumpster, has that already been taken? Have you guys been able to look at what was dumped? What was thrown out?
What do you think was in there?
Clothes? I don't know.
What makes you say clothes?
I can't tell what he's holding. I don't know if it's a plastic bag full of stuff or...
Inside of that bag is Maddie's backpack, Maddie's school computer, and one of her Crocs.
Are you telling me we're looking for a body right now?
We're looking for Maddie, absolutely. 100% we're looking for her.
No.
Now, I probably don't need to tell you, but for a parent to refer to their missing child as a body is really bad. Most parents are going to cling on to hope till the last minute. They're going to try and come up with other alternative solutions. Okay, he threw out her laptop and her bag with her laptop and her crock and all these things. But what if he's just taken her somewhere? But no, straight away, are you telling me we're looking for a body? And he corrects her and says, we're looking for Maddie. But if you go and look at any other case of missing children, those parents that aren't involved, you will never ever hear them referring to their child as a body. Those parents who genuinely care about their children and who want their children back, you'll never hear them referring to their child as a body. What is this telling you about Jen?
Has she had any changes in her behavior in the past few years?
I'll say yes. But it was all around where puberty hit, and like the typical teenage, the attitude, the sass, the talking back, the disrespect, the pushing boundaries. She was very much doing that. But that calmed down over the last few months. It got even better when Stefan moved out and went to Northport. Maddie and I were actually seeing a therapist together to try to like work through our issues because we were having problems communicating. So, yeah.
When you listen to what Jen has said there, she has just voiced her priorities. He's asked her about changes in behaviour. She talks about Maddie's attitude and everything, and she's the one that makes the connection that Maddie has been so much better since Stefan moved out. She's making that connection in her own head. And yet, not only did she invite him to come up and stay with them, she was talking about wanting to have him move back in with them. And she sent Maddie to sleep alone with him. This, when she knows that for some reason her daughter is in a much better space mentally with Stefan not around. Who's Jen thinking about here when she got Stefan to come up and stay? Not Maddie. Jen is thinking about Jen. Now, if you were a responsible parent and you were capable of recognising that your child is doing so much better with your ex-boyfriend off the scene, why would you then bring him back onto the scene? And why the heck would you A, leave her alone with him while you're at work, and B, send them upstairs to sleep together? This is not the act of a decent mother. Yeah, sure, maybe they were having therapy because they were having communication troubles. But what is she saying here? Again, it's not we were having therapy or Maddie was going to therapy because I was concerned about her mental health. No, this is about having therapy because she wants to get along better with Maddie. Who is that serving? That's serving Jen yet again. If she was genuinely concerned, then she would have taken on board all the things that Maddie's teachers had told her. You have this counsellor who told Jen apparently about that incident where Maddie was overwhelmed and she was drawing scribbles and saying that's how she felt. And Jen's main concern is about counselling so that they can communicate better, not about counselling to help her child who's clearly struggling with something huge. Again, not what I would expect from a decent parent. I would expect a decent parent to start off by getting that kid in for counselling on their own first, and then perhaps working on building their relationship up again. But everything Jen did was about Jen. It was not about Maddie.
Did she disclose to you about her... Has she had a period yet? Do you know?
Yeah.
Did she disclose to you about that?
Yes.
So do you know her regular
Cycle? I usually put it, she usually tells me when she gets it, and we put it in an app.
Mm-hmm.
I must have missed it this month, or she must have not told me this month when she got it, but I have it written down when she got it back in January.
Here's where I would like to hear people's perspective on things. On one hand, on the surface, this makes Jen sound like a caring, responsible parent. But she's helping her daughter track her cycle. But, okay, on one side, I can see the benefits of that. I know for me as a teenager, I used to become very, very ill once a month. And while my mother didn't track my cycle, she always made sure that there was a box of Pondstand in the house for me for when I got my period. But this is going beyond that. This is actually putting Maddie's cycle into an app. Maddie had her own phone, and she was old enough to actually track these things for herself. So why did Jen need it to be in an app that they both were looking at? Is it because she thinks it sounds like what a responsible parent would do? Is it because she's just so controlling that she has to know everything that's going on in Maddie's life? Or is it for another reason? See, the thing is, everything that we've heard from Jen, when you really break it down, it's all about looking after Jen. I can't think of any example of anything that Jen has said or done where I would say, wow, what a good mother, she's doing that for her child. She's said some things, but she's not very convincing, and she actually contradicts those same things at later times. So like talking about getting Maddie ready for school, and she claims that she did Maddie's water bottle and all this stuff, and at another date she talks about Maddie taking her water bottle out of her bag and washing it and then filling it and putting it back in. So she can't even get her story straight. It seems like everything Jen does is done for the benefit of Jen. Which makes me ask, why does Jen benefit from keeping track of Maddie's cycle? Why is it important for Jen to keep track of Maddie's cycle. Sorry, I'm not going to stop recording. My dog's got the fidgets, that's the noise you can hear. It's her claws on the wooden floors. If I keep stopping every time she does it, I'll never get this done. So, yeah, the question. What is it serving for Jen to keep track of Maddie's cycle? You tell me.
Those images you guys showed me with the car, is there any more?
I mean, none that I can show you right now, but yes, there's quite a few.
But we don't see where he ends up going in the car.
Okay, that is up there with referring to Maddie as a body. So, this is that interview where they showed her an image of Maddie deceased in Stearns' car. Here, she is really calmly asking if there's more images. And he says, well, not that we can show you. And then she wants to know if they got more record, if they know where his car went, basically. I'm sorry, but you're asking to see more images of your child deceased. You're asking if they figure out where his car went. And you're doing this so calmly. Where's the emotion? I was gobsmacked when I heard her ask this. And every time I hear it, I have the same reaction. How can a parent even consider asking such a question, let alone verbalise it? When a parent experiences loss, there are some things that are really hard to verbalise at first, because once you say it, it's real. And it doesn't have to be a parent experiencing loss. I'm sure there are people out there who know what I'm talking about. You've experienced loss yourself, and maybe that first 24, 48 hours, you haven't been able to verbalise it because it hurts too much, and if you verbalise it, it makes it real. And yet here she is, wanting to see more pictures of her dead daughter? That is not normal behaviour from a parent. And if you can tell me that is, please tell me what context that would occur in. Please give me an example. Because I can't imagine in any scenario any normal parent asking to see more images of their deceased child.
I don't know what you want me to say or do, or just want my daughter back.
And this is exactly what I was just talking about. We are literally having a conversation right now about Maddie possibly being dead.
Yeah.
And you have yet to shed a tear. But when I mentioned to you that you were crying violently almost. Do you understand what I'm saying?
because that was physical proof. That was proof of what was happening. That destroyed me. Until that picture of her asleep or not asleep in the car is not proof to me until I see a body. I have hope that she's still alive. But I don't know. With what you're telling me, I'm starting to fucking doubt everything. But I can't tell you why I broke down over one, and I'm being really serious now. I just...
Okay, I had to play that clip because he basically nails her for not responding in the way that he would expect a parent to respond. And what happens? It completely takes the wind out of her sails. She doesn't know where to go from this. I believe she's manipulative enough to realise that bursting into tears at that point in time is not going to serve her purpose, because he's just called her on her lack of emotion. So instead, she's playing the, well, I just don't know why I'm like this. Again, this is not what I would expect from a parent. First of all, her saying, I don't know what you want me to say. No parent's going to give a rat's ass what a detective wants them to say if their child is missing and the detective is saying your child is dead. That parent is going to start showing some form of emotion. Possibly they might even be unable to speak. But then, when he calls her on it, why is she not angry? Why is she not yelling at him and saying, how dare you accuse me of not caring about my child? Her responses do not match. He is 100% spot on. This woman does not act like a mother should act.
Right now, we are probably going to start working this case as a homicide.
Okay.
Now, what has happened in the last half of this interview is that he has continued to put it in her face that her daughter is deceased. He is trying from every angle to get a response from this woman. And here he lays it all out on the table. They're going from here on in to treat it as a homicide. And she's like, okay. This is where he is essentially saying, you have to face up to the situation. He's put this in her face multiple times now, that her daughter is deceased. He's trying to get a reaction from her over the fact that her child is deceased. He's trying to get an expected reaction. She should be either yelling and screaming that she's going to kill Stearns, or she should be at the point where she can't even talk because she's so emotional. We're getting neither of those things from her. Is this a good parent? Is this what you would expect from a mother? I don't think so.
Has he ever talked about giving Maddie medication? Like any of his medication?
I don't think so, no.
You don't think so, or?
No.
Okay. Have you ever given her any of your medication?
She's got her own anxiety medication.
Do you double check her medication?
When we give it to her, yeah. I make sure I grab the bottle or she grabs the bottle, but like somebody's got eyes on her, grabbing the pills and taking them. Like it's a tag team situation. She's not allowed to take them alone. So we just make sure that we gotta watch her, because I don't want her to accidentally grab the wrong bottle and accidentally take Adderall before bed, because that sounds like a terrible idea.
So it actually makes me really angry when I hear her carrying on about having to keep a close eye on Maddie when she takes her medications. You know, she's such a careful, vigilant, responsible parent, but she wants to make sure that Maddie doesn't accidentally take the wrong medications. But she's more than happy to send Maddie upstairs with Stefan. Could this be that she's trying to be a responsible parent by keeping an eye on Maddie when she takes her meds? I don't believe so. I think it is most convenient for Jen to have Maddie having sleeping meds at night so that Jen can get a decent night's sleep. I think in terms of Maddie's ADHD medications, well, it comes down to appearances again. I played a clip in a previous video where when I was looking at the Soto Psy, and Jen was talking about Maddie at school, and you could tell that she was extremely disappointed with how Maddie was going at school, because it's all about appearances for her. She didn't like the fact that Maddie wasn't achieving at school, because it didn't make her look like a good parent. So I believe that's the only reason why Maddie was on medication for ADHD. Jen didn't want to get off her ass at home and help Maddie with her homework and help her catch up with assignments, because there were no eyes on her at home. But at least she could tell the school, I'm a responsible parent. I took her to a paediatrician, and look, she's got medication for her ADHD, because that's what a responsible parent does. For Jen, I believe being a parent is all about appearances. She didn't want to let Maddie control her own meds, because she wanted to make sure Maddie was taking her meds. We know that supposedly Maddie was telling her friends that she hadn't been taking her meds since Valentine's Day. So for a couple of weeks, is that because she was staying with Yolanda while Jen was doing her training? I just feel that, first of all, a responsible parent would be allowing her child to naturally fall asleep at night, rather than drugging a child whose brain is still developing. At the end of the day, sure, you can say hydroxyzine, it's just like Benadryl. Yeah, it is, but it is still what is known as a psychotropic drug. It basically goes through that blood-brain barrier, and it does have a direct effect on the brain. A person's brain, a child's brain, is still growing until they reach 14 years of age. It is still developing until they are roughly 25 years of age. Any psychotropic medication taken before the age of 25 is going to have a permanent effect on the developing brain. I don't know why a doctor would prescribe that for a child, especially not a 12-year-old. But that is not the sign of a responsible parent. It's so important for a child to learn strategies for getting to sleep. Sure, when you've got ADHD, you're going to struggle with sleep patterns. I have so many memories of when I was a child, one of my favourite stalling strategies was to yell at the top of my lungs for Dad to come into my room and ask for a glass of water, because I didn't want to go to sleep. I know I was one of those kids that was a horror at going to sleep. But you know what? My parents didn't pander to that. I learnt strategies. You know, we were one of those families where, as kids, we had a warm bath before bed. We went to bed. We would soon get told if we kept stalling. And, you know, these days, you've got digital media. You can play music for a child to help them get to sleep. Read them a story. Teach them strategies for getting to sleep. Don't drug them just because it's convenient for you. And I think that's what it comes down to here. She was vigilant about Maddie's medications, not because she cared about the effects on Maddie. She cared about appearances and the effects on Jen. Now, I've actually only gotten to the end of February 29th. I've still got interviews from March 1st and April 18th, but I do want to talk about them. Particularly because when you look at the derivative use one, Jen is giving answers that she thinks show her as a responsible parent, in my opinion. And also, by the time you get to the video interview, you can tell she's trying to appear like the good mother. So there's a definite shift with her coming up with more things to make us look like a good parent. So I want to still cover them. So there'll be a part 2 to this, because I think it's important that we look at all these instances of Jen as a parent. Really dig into her parenting. So I'll leave it at this for today's video. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for listening all the way through. Please subscribe and please hit the like button. That helps get these videos out into the algorithm, gets them seen by more people. And provided that YouTube doesn't once again turn the comments section off in this video, I would dearly love for you to leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on this. If the comments are turned off, trust me, I do keep going back in and turning them back on. And you can help me by getting in a comment before they get turned off again. Even if it's just putting some love hearts in for Maddie. Seems that once you get enough comments, YouTube stops turning them off. So I will apologise in case comments are turned off. I try not to let that happen, and I do go back as often as I can and turn them back on. So thanks, and I will catch you in the next one.